So thank you all for being here today. To our panelists, to all of our attendees, I'm going to do a little bit of intro and housekeeping, and then I'll let them launch into their really great presentations. So if you've never joined us for one of these before, welcome to our sort of monthly downtown redevelopment Brownfields webinar series. It is brought to you by us here at Blueprint Kentucky and the Brownfields Technical Assistance Program, which is a partnership with the State Energy and Environment Cabinet Brownfield Office. That is a collaboration between ourselves at Blueprint Kentucky and that office with Kirsten O'Leary kind of leading the charge. And some of you may be familiar with my colleague Shane Barton, who I had recently taken over this work from. So shout out to Shane, as always. Um, and this partnership between us sort of allows us to reach more communities through education, outreach, really amplifying the great work happening around here, around the state, rather through these complex projects. So within this, we offer a range of technical assistance work to help communities become more competitive within that brownfield application itself, as well as offering some specific sort of outreach and engagement strategies that we think lead to long-term impacts in community. So speaking of the Brownfield application, our webinar next month will be about navigating the newest notice of funding opportunity, RFP, request for proposal, whatever they call it this year. So if you're interested in applying for Brownfield's funding this year, please join us for that. Kirsten and I will be breaking that down for you all next month. So the housekeeping, I believe the chat is disabled, but that our attendees should have access to the Q&A section. So if you have any questions that come up, please put them in the Q&A, and then we'll take a little time at the end of both presentations to talk through some of your questions and probably some of my questions. And you may have noticed the recording. So this is being recorded. It will be posted to the Blueprint Kentucky YouTube channel. So that channel houses our entire catalog of webinars from this Brownfields Technical Assistance Program through some of our other programs. Really great library there of myself and Shane sort of, talking about the various aspects of these programs. So please check that out, subscribe to us on YouTube, and then when you get this, share it with your friends, post it wherever you'd like. So that being said, I am so excited to be here today with our two guests who um, are both doing, I would say, like similar but different work that's in the same realm around sort of code enforcement regulation in their communities. So we have Bailey Richards here, the former downtown coordinator of the city of Hazard, now works with the Mountain Association. I'm sorry, Bailey, I'm blanking on your title at Mountain Association, so please forgive me.
All
Um,
good. It is Director of Business Support Services. It's new, so no problem. I'm also blanking about it pretty regularly. So
we're learning together here today. So first up today, Bailey is going to speak to the revitalization work that she did in downtown Hazard through some tax policies and entrepreneurial support. And then we're going to go across the state from Hazard to Louisville, and we're going to speak to Richard Price here from the city of Louisville, who's going to talk about the city's efforts and the ways that they have approached code enforcement and how that sort of combines and meets community engagement strategies and how they're sort of tackling abandoned properties, deteriorated properties, vacant lots in ways that are hopefully, a little more proactive for community. So those are our guests today, and I appreciate them being here. I appreciate y'all being here as attendees. And that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Bailey to kick us off.
all right, I am gonna share my screen. Okay, so as Tyler said, I am Bailey Richards. I am the former downtown coordinator for the city of Hazard. I was in that role for 6.5 years. And I started shortly after the Blighted and Abandoned Ordinance was passed for the city of Hazard. So I was there at the very beginning of instituting, implementing, and then enforcing that. So what you see here are just a picture of our downtown during Christmas time. And then you have an area that we will definitely talk about called the Grand. This was a space that was at one time 4 different buildings. And over time, each one of them burned. They were owned by an individual that did not have the means or the ability to fix them up, and was very upset when the city had to do some demolition of part of one of them. You'll see some of these pictures in a little bit as well of what this looked like before. Eventually, after many, many years in court, the city was able to work on getting them, and we tried to keep the buildings because we are in the floodplain and it's very hard to build back. But unfortunately, we were told by our structural engineer that that was not possible. But that's what these two pictures are, just to give some context as to what Hazard looks like. This kind of tells you. All right, so I was the downtown coordinator from 2019 until just this past July. As far as I know, and anybody can correct this if they know more, I was the first person in Kentucky to be hired by a city and a county in a joint partnership. Um, Now there are city county governments. We are not a city county government. We are an individual city within a county, but they actually split my salary to be able to afford to hire this role. It was a brand new position. During my 6.5, 7 years, we saw 74 businesses open in our 1.5 mile long downtown. During that time with the city, I was able to develop 3 different commercial buildings. And those are now home to the Art Station, Red Spotted Newt Bookstore, Hazard Coffee Company, and Ready Set Play Toy Store. In addition, one of the buildings also has 5 offices that are occupied by different organizations that do economic development work across the area. And then we also started 3 other projects that, unfortunately, by switching roles, I am not going to be able to see completed, but they are in capable hands. I worked with many, many local owners to be able to purchase previously blighted properties, and we'll look at a few of those. And then I've recently started my new role with Mountain Association as the Director of Business Support Services. It was a very tough position to leave. I really enjoyed and really loved my work in Hazard. I still work in Hazard. I'm actually just about 5 buildings down from my previous office, so at least I get to still be here and bug everybody and see all of everybody all the time, which is great. Oops, I think I skipped ahead. All right. So the city of Hazard, to give a little context, was founded in 1884 and currently has a population of about 5,248. That might be wrong, but that's somewhere in there. However, we have always been the regional hub of the 8 to 10 counties around us, and our daytime population is actually over 51,000. So even though we are a small city, we punch a bit higher than our weight because we are the home to mostly the medical field, education, lots of job opportunities and things like that, lots of larger scale retail as well. So we do end up having a daytime population that is significantly higher. The city of Hazard was mostly developed after 1912 when the coming of the train came through. And then it really peaked in 1940. And that's kind of when we had our highest number of population. A lot of that was due to the coal mines being in full boom there. And ever since then, we saw a slow, steady decline up until 2020, when we actually had an 18% population increase. It was us and Pikeville, and I think maybe one other city in Eastern Kentucky that were the only ones that actually had a population increase. And we beat Pikeville. They had 12%, we had 18. They're still bigger than us, but we'll take it. So that was pretty exciting that we actually saw a trend change over there. Now, since then, we've had the floods and things like that, so we're still going to have to wait and see at the next census what that has actually done to our population. As I said, Hazard has always been the central hub for business, justice, medicine, education, and government for our area. Coal mining was the largest driver of our economy, and as coal mining declined, so did investment in our downtown and in our buildings. There were many, many attempts over the years to kind of find what's next after coal, what's next in addition to coal. And a lot of that included developing areas outside of downtown, using former mine sites and things like that for real estate development, retail development. And unfortunately, as those were successfully created, it pulled a lot of money and investment and businesses and buildings and things like that out of our downtown, which left our downtown with It wasn't completely unoccupied, but it was very minimally occupied, and the occupants were not generally your commercial retail that you would expect to see in a downtown. This is a picture from probably the 40s, I think. So it kind of shows you, I do think there must have been some sort of parade or something going on, because this is a pretty wild photo with the number of cars. So I don't think that's quite accurate to what it looked like all the time, but you can see all of the signs and all of the stores. So that tells you pretty well that this was a very occupied city. Our downtown is almost 100% in the floodplain, which makes it really, really difficult to redevelop. You cannot necessarily access a lot of the tax credits. You can't access a lot of grant funding for historic redevelopment when your buildings are in a floodplain. And it just generally makes it more difficult. And so because of that, when buildings burn or get severely damaged over time, it's very hard to replace them. Generational ownership meant that we ended up having an aging population of landlords, and many of their descendants no longer lived in the area. So we had people owning buildings that they couldn't really do much with to fix them up. So that's kind of our history. And this is what that led to. This is 4 different buildings in our downtown. This bottom one is now called the Art Station, but it was previously a Greyhound bus station. It sat empty for around 20 some years. It had been owned by a bank and then was purchased by a very small nonprofit. And then unfortunately, it took a really long time for that nonprofit to be able to get things moving on it. But this was a redevelopment project that I got to project manage through my position with the city. And we will see what that looks like here in just a little bit. But this is what it looked like when we started. And then this actually had a roof here, and that all collapsed. So we lost that part of the building, but it became a beautiful courtyard. This was what they called the Grand Hotel. This is the space that you see here. So that kind of gives an indication of what that space has been turned into. But this building was built, I believe, in 1911, and it was 6 stories at one time. It was a crowning jewel. It was an amazing place that people stayed. And just over years, it became dilapidated, and it ended up burning in 2015, and then ended up in a legal battle between the owner and the city for a very long time until we were able to purchase it in 2021. And that's when the redevelopment of this area started. This was a welcome center for a beautiful hotel up on the hill. This was kind of where you would stop. It ended up being donated to the city, and after quite a while, it sat mostly empty. And this is what it looked like at that time. And then this is just a wall, but my favorite reason for including this is what we did with said wall was paid for by SEDIC, now Blueprint. And so I'll show you that as well. This was a grant that we were able to get. So we sandblasted and completely repaired this wall. This building is now home to 2 businesses, and it had also been empty for several years before this. All right, and this is what all of these spaces look like now. This is the Art Station. This is the Grand. This is now the Red Spotted Newt bookstore. And then this is that mural that we were able to use some Blueprint funding to have painted. And all of these are now incredibly important parts of our downtown. And you can just tell that the life is back in these areas, which is wonderful. All right, so starting in the mid 2010s, groups like Envision Hazard began lobbying for downtown revitalization. Eventually, that led to new people running for office and the creation of my former position, the position of downtown coordinator. And all of a sudden, the city government was made up of new names and people that weren't all necessarily born in Hazard. They were under 30, they were women, they were minorities, they ran the gambit. It was no longer kind of an institutional monolith running our government. We had a wonderful mayor for many, many years. However, he was the same mayor from 1977 until his death in 2010. And because of that, you can kind of find yourself on a specific track for a very, very long time, which can be great. And he definitely did a lot of great work. But there's also something to be said about the energy that comes with change as well. And so the work We ended up hiring shared employees between the city and the county. As I had said, I was the first one, but then they ended up hiring a grant writer, which has now become an entire grants team. And over the last several years, given the size of our city and county, surprisingly, they have been able to write and been awarded several $100 million for mostly infrastructure projects. And these are things that were not going to be able to be done if it weren't for the ability of the city and the county to work together to hire these employees. So collaboration is great. And around the same time of all of this change was when the city of Hazard adopted our blighted and abandoned ordinance, which is the main focus of this presentation. So the blighted and abandoned ordinance defines a qualifying unit as one that has been unoccupied or a nuisance for greater than 12 months. We have an architect who has been a part-time on staff with the city for many years. His name is Dan Roll, and he went around and made note of properties that fit this definition. He created this list. And then that list was brought to our code enforcement board, who voted upon that list. And then once they were placed officially on the list and they were voted on that, the owners were sent letters saying that you have 12 months to remedy whatever the issue was. The blight and abandoned ordinance was worked on through the Kentucky League of Cities. It is something that they have helped craft and promote, and it is something that several cities have adopted. We adopted ours in 2019, and then we officially voted the first slate of properties onto it in 2020, right before the pandemic. And so we ended up giving an additional 12 months to those owners because it was mid-pandemic. And so they ended up having 24 months to remedy any of those issues before we actually started enforcing the tax on those properties in 2021. The way our blighted and abandoned ordinance works is that properties that are on that list will be charged a 5 times rate for their property taxes if they do not remedy the issues. And usually it's abandonment, although it can be nuisance issues, it can be danger issues, things like that within that 12 months. So our city taxes are not especially high by any means, but 5 times definitely makes you take note and look at what you might be able to do with these properties. So that's how our blight and abandon works. There's definitely other versions of it, but this is how the city of Hazard institutes ours. So what happened after that? As you can imagine, people start getting bills for 5 times the tax rate that they've been paying for a very, very long time on these abandoned properties, and they were upset. We would get a lot of calls, and at the time, we did not have a full-time code enforcement officer, so many of those calls ended up coming to my office. And so we ended up being able to work with those property owners and say, hey, you could try to sell the property, fix up the property, get the property rented, work with us on possibly donating the property, finding another organization that might be able to take this property as a donation. And so we were able to kind of use that as a carrot and stick. We have to have a reason to kind of promote that people should come to us and work on these, because otherwise it's a very expensive endeavor to have someone work on a building, especially if it's been empty for a long time. So to say, hey, you can come with us and we can work with you on this. We can help you fix this situation. We can help you find someone that would buy it, that would invest in it, what have you. And over the next several years after that, our initial list had around 40 properties on it, and over half of those have changed hands since then. Most of those have been sold to neighbors in the community. A lot of those were houses, although some were definitely commercial buildings. And so most of those were neighbors that said, I would love to be able to buy this property. I've just never been able to figure out how to get the great great grandson of the guy who built it to work with me to buy that. And I can turn it into a bigger yard for my family. I can turn it into a space for my neighborhood. And so we had a lot of that. Some of the properties have been restored. Some of them have had to be torn down, unfortunately. And we still have some owners that we're still working with, and we're trying to get them to be able to work with us. But it's a momentum swing. It's a little by little, and to have 40 properties that were previously abandoned for greater than, by the time they were actually included in this, at least 3 years. But in reality, most of them were significantly more than that. To have that many of them sold to new ownership and have something happen with them was actually a really big deal. So here's some case studies of what some of that has looked like. In the first picture here, what you can't really tell is that there's actually two apartment buildings. There's one in the front and one in the back. These were abandoned for a very long time. They had a lot of squatting issues in them. And while we certainly do not want to take away housing opportunities for people, this became a very dangerous situation where we had a frequent issues with fires starting in these buildings and things like that. And we didn't want anyone getting hurt accidentally in a situation like this. So the owners of those buildings ended up donating to the city. The city was able to tear them down. We had already previously purchased the building next door, which is that one over there. And we had already made the plan that we were going to work with a local restaurant owner to try to get that turned into a restaurant space. And then this outdoor space will go with that restaurant once this whole project is completed. We've done some of the work to this building, so it looks better than it does in this picture, but I don't have a current picture that shows both of these, but it is much nicer now. It's still not completed and it's still not totally a restaurant with the outdoor space and everything, but this area is now grassy and maintained, and this has been painted and fixed up. So it does look a little bit better than this in these pictures, but you can already tell that you took kind of a dangerous situation and now we have a space that's going to be used, which is great. This building was City Hall. This was City Hall up until 1979 when I feel like this is going to be a theme. It burned. And at that point, City Hall moved into the building that it is now. But you can see what it looked like when it was City Hall. You have people sitting outside. It was also a bomb shelter, which is a fun, addition to these older buildings. And then it became several offices. It changed hands several times. It was fixed up by the owners at the time. And actually, the mayor, that was mayor when this building was occupied before the fire and all of that, his family ended up purchasing it, did a bunch of work to it. It actually was really well maintained for a long time. And then just over time, it became unused. And so they had started to explore the idea of demolishing the building. And so the city worked with them and said, it's going to be a lot more expensive for you to demolish the building than it will be for you to donate it to us. And then we can start working on figuring out what to do with it. And so right now it is slated to become the future home of the Southeast Kentucky African American Museum and Cultural Center, which will be very cool once that is completed. And then I do not have a picture of the before of this building. I really wish I did, because it was really, really bad. But this was a Jerry's restaurant. It had been owned by a gentleman that I don't know if he's ever been to Hazard truly. His dad had been an investor in several Jerry's franchises over the years. And after he passed away and all of the other owners of the various Jerry's franchises that they owned passed away, he ended up with it and it sat empty for over 20 years. He had put signs and had people put signs for that it was for sale, but it would be prices that were just really, really not tenable for what the building was. So he had asked me to try to find a tenant for it when he got his first letter. So I showed the building dozens of times within the 2 years after the blighted and abandoned ordinance first came into place. And everybody walked in and said, there is just no way I could make this work. And so when he finally got the bill for the higher amount, he was very, very angry and called up and I said, hey, how about if I find you some really good comparables and you try to sell this for a rate that is reasonable for what it is? He did. He lowered the price and it sold within 4 days. And now it is the home to a beautiful boutique. So this is just some of what can happen with these different changes and with this ordinance if you guys are interested in looking into it. So I guess this is the place where I put questions. Is this an appropriate time for questions, Tyler?
We can do a couple short questions here and then maybe have some broader conversation at the end if any questions. And if not, if they come to you suddenly, we can get to them at the end.
That works. All right, I'll skip ahead. So since I have now left the city, if you do want to talk to someone that is still with the city, they have hired Joey Jones and Logan Smith, that are not, and I messed up Joey's email address there. Sorry, it's .gov, not .gov. Um, and so they are the ones that have taken over this position. But if you do want to talk to me specifically, here is my information. So I will leave this up for just a minute. So if you need to screenshot it or anything like that, I'm sure that Tyler will also probably send all of this out. So, all right, I'll stop sharing my screen so you guys can take over, Richard.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Bailey. And also want to shout out Joey is actually here. So shout
Oh,
out to
good,
Joey.
yay!
He's one of the attendees. I do
Sorry, I
one
messed up your email address there, Joey.
I do have one quick question of you said there were 74 businesses that had opened.
Mhm.
Are they all still in business?
So no, but more than you would expect. So I believe it's 50% of businesses close within the first 5 years on average is the national average. And over that 7 years, we have only had about 11% that have closed. And that is through COVID, that is through 2 floods. So I consider that to be a pretty massive win. So yeah, they're not all still open, but a huge, huge percentage of them are.
Yeah, a very impressive percentile. So, all right, we'll hand it over to Richard now, and I will. Do you all still want me to run that presentation?
Well, let me see if I can share my screen because I think
Okay.
I may be able to here. Let me look. Okay, how about that? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, there we go. Beautiful.
All right, good, good. Okay, so yeah, we'll get started here. Again, my name is uh, Richard Price. I am the Director of Codes and Regulations with Louisville Metro Government. And essentially, uh, Bailey, we did actually merge city and county governments a few years back. I think it's in 2003 or two. I can't remember that, but we did merge government. So it's Louisville Jefferson County, and I'm the director of codes and regulations. We have a little over 200 employees. Uh, Specifically, as relate to this presentation, we have about 60 code enforcement officers. And I will tell you, when you look at for this presentation, vacant and abandoned properties is a huge issue in Louisville, Jefferson County. Big, big issue. It causes a lot of issues. Obviously, you know, the threat of fire, the threat of crime, and all kinds of issues. And I've only been with codes and regulations for now 17 months. My predecessor was here a little over 25 years. Prior to that, and what I brought to codes and regulations, not that they was doing anything wrong, but just a different approach to code enforcement that actually uh, start with clear priorities, um, to be data driven, and target resources in an effective way to help us. Uh, and I'll talk about some of these things. Engage our community early and often, which is a huge uh, process that we must do if we're going to change the culture. Breaking down internal silos and external silos, are more so than that. And then just be persistent and proactive enforcement as we make this culture shift. That's what we need to do. Now, I do want to say that when you look at our vision to set the standard, obviously to set the standard codes and regulation industry, but to be forward thinking, efficient, and then more importantly, trusted by promoting safety, supporting growth, and fostering community trust. Everything we do, everything we do, every decision we make is all wrapped up in this vision. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll see why. So when we look at understanding the role of what we do, and I will tell you, we do a lot. I mean, we touch a lot of areas in our community. We work collaboratively with other agencies, but more importantly, the citizens of Louisville depend on us every day to step up and provide these resources that are so valuable to their life. So we are, again, a viable resource for the community. Our goal is, one of the things we do is protect vacant and abandoned properties, supporting tenants. Okay. Not only we do support landlords, but we also support tenants, and then accountability for repeat violators. Because as I've seen this, been in this role, a lot of problems that we have is with repeat violators, and we're going to try to do it. And we're doing it in a lot of ways. To be a resource for the community, we use that as a tool and not a penalty. See, I don't see code enforcement as being punitive. I don't. If you talk about true success, but I see it more as a tool for a resource and to collaborate with the community to make things better. One thing we've done, I think, is very important, is we connect the community, and this may seem trivial to some, but our phone calls, we have enhanced our phone system so citizens can call codes and regulations directly. Now, we have a huge call-in system called 311 through our emergency management systems, and people can always call 311 and they funnel those calls to us. I've said, hey, call us directly so we can talk to them and deal with some of the challenges. And then working with town halls, being in the community. And I've tasked my leadership team to get in the community. I myself, I've not turned anything, to this day, this 17 months, I have not turned down any invite to come into that community. Number one, to live the moment. If I can get my leadership to live the moments of what people, and then hear what people say, and then take the opportunity to educate, is one of the great things that we do. And so as I move on from here, we look at some of the approaches to what we're doing here. Let's see, let me go back here. Okay, keep going the other way. Okay. Just bear with me here. I'm gonna try to get this to go back. Okay. So when I look at some of the approaches, and what I try to do is, and I think this is important, is to balance accountability and support. When we look at this approach of doing this, we got to shift from being reactive to more of a proactive type of code enforcement. See, when I came here, all we did was just wait on the call. Okay, we got to get to the root cause of what's causing this, and a lot of times it was on our part, poor follow up. We have numerous cases of where we have been to some properties 20, 30, 40 times, some even in the 70s and 80s. I mean, that just can't happen. I mean, that's not getting things done. But that's what happens when you have more of a reactive type code enforcement. So we have moved to strategies that are more proactive. Instead of reacting to complaints, we try to get to some of the root causes of how we got here, how we can educate, and how we can hold those responsible accountable. And we look at some of the effective tools. And Bailey, listen, I'm definitely going to get a copy of that ordinance. Sounds so exciting. We have done some things, but I would say local ordinances and property maintenance codes. We got to change some of our laws to help us do, and we have changed our clearboarding laws, and we have done some things around vacant abandoned properties. And then we got to use strategies, strategic inspections. And what comes along with strategic inspections is timelines, giving people timelines to fix this problem and keep it moving. I'm a very 100% data driven leader. The data says it all. The data tells us where we need to look, where we need to focus, and in most cases, give us the root cause of why this problem exists. So we identify the data and we try to make decisions based on what the data is saying. And then here's a huge one: addressing repeat offenders. We got to do that. And then listen, I've been accused since I've been in this seat of targeting people and going after certain individuals. Yeah, I have. Absolutely. Because, number one, not necessarily to be punitive, but again, to educate, to work as a resource to help them to get into compliance, and then to support the people that is most impacted by some of these, and in this case, vacant and abandoned properties. So we do this through our code board. I think the code enforcement board is one of the most positive and the most effective ways we get compliance. We have a team of board members that hear cases, because obviously, when we do get to issue citations and act on people in a civil way, people have a right to appeal that, and I see that as an opportunity not only to get compliance, but also to educate that property owner. And here's what happens. That property owner, whether it works out in his favor or his or her favor or not, what happens is they become our biggest marketers around their dinner tables and with their colleagues and at their bars to say, hey, this is what code and regulations are doing. This is what I've learned. You might not want to do that. Okay, you might want to work with them. So addressing repeat offenders is so important. And then, as I said earlier, collaborating with the neighborhood. Live in the moment. When I go to listen, I go to hear, but I also bring data. And people understand data. Yes, we have many differences. There's times people may not agree with what I'm saying or don't like what I'm presenting, but everybody tends to understand the data every time. And so it's been very, very good in doing that. Okay. So as I look at some of the key initiatives, and I'm very proud about our vacant and abandoned property initiative. This initiative has been huge. We did a pilot program for 12 months. We just ended our 12-month pilot program where we partner with several agencies across Louisville Metro, including Louisville Fire, LMPD, Housing and Community Development, our homeless coordinators, and all of them. We took a certain part of town, in this case, the Portland Avenue, and what we did, we took we identified, number one, vacant and abandoned properties, either whether it was vacant or whether it was abandoned, or they vacant and abandoned, and we secured these properties, because that's the key. As you may know, Bailey, that when you don't secure vacant and abandoned properties, well, it's a hot spot for squatters. And then when you get into the winter months, what happens? Okay, but what happens here is they try to stay warm and it burns down. Then there's a hot spot for crime. People hide weapons, and not only just crime, it's a hot spot for violent crime. So here's what we found. After that year, we saw a 63 reduction in structural fires. And when you do the math on that, when you do the total math, the fire department saved hundreds of thousands of dollars by not have to answer these calls. When they answer those calls to respond to these fires, there's the potential firefighters getting hurt and injured. So that was huge. we saw a 36% decrease in 911 reports, 40% decrease in emergency medical runs. So this was a direct impact to the community, and we're very proud of that program. One thing I would say before moving on, the way we secured that property, we did it through clearboarding. And clearboarding is this plexiglass where we use to keep people out, because just the plywood didn't get it. And we cut down tremendously on the number of breaches. I think we had a few breaches. When I look at the numbers here, we had 53. We had 53 structures that we boarded up, and we only had 12 breaches one time, and then no more after that. So there was just 12 of them they was able to breach. But after that, we put the clearboarding, secured it. We had no more breaches. And you compare that to the previous year of 88 properties that were secured, and all of the breaches that they had, and the money that Louisville Fire. We're very proud of that, and it shows that it worked, to the point that I got our Metro Council to implement a clearboarding ordinance that required property owners, if you have a vacant structure in that you know you have a structure or property that you know is going to be vacant, you must secure it to keep it from becoming a nuisance and a hazard to the community. And then, this is basically what I was saying on that as relates to that. Then our rental registry, they did make some, we got 29,000 long-term rental properties registered in the city of Louisville. And that's not all of them, but we are impressed by this, because what happens is under this ordinance, this requires property owners to keep their information up to date. So if we have an issue with the property owner, it goes back to what I said. We don't want to be punitive, but I want to be able to call you and say, hey, let's talk about this, how we can fix this, and what we can do. And it also improves access to the tenant. It enhances safety, and then a more proactive code enforcement. Because here's what happens. If I can get my code enforcement officer and property owners talking, I'm going to tell you, we can get some things done. And then we turn it more from a reactive to a proactive standpoint, and also don't ever forget fairness. And that's what I'm always about, is fairness. I've created, which I think is very important, to a special task force, the Code and Regulation Enforcement Special Task Force and we call it CREST, is dedicated to addressing complex property challenges across our city. Remember, I told you earlier, there's so many of our cases. We take in 30,000 cases a year, complaints a year. We got so many that it's hard to resolve. This CREST team, this collaborative team, work together as a team to collaborate with other agencies, collaborate with the neighborhood and neighborhood associations to tackle some of these very tough issues. And that one in the picture here is a huge one. This is Sheila Terrace, where people live in horrible conditions. You can see the horrible steps. We went in, our CREST team got very aggressive, and I'm here. They had $457,000 in fines and liens. And I'm here to tell you, because of the collaborative effort that we have done, we have worked together with a new owner of this building. They're going to pay those $450,000, which is huge, for our budget. But more importantly, somebody's going to have some good affordable housing that is clean, that is safe, and that is healthy for our community, which is who we truly is about. Okay. And I'm going to hurry on here. Just the violence reduction. Working with CREST, work with some of these initiatives have shown a reduction in some of our violent cases and crime around our city. Detroit, also Boston, I've looked at their numbers. It's proven when you reduce vacant and abandoned property, you secure vacant and abandoned property, you take away blight, it reduces violent crime. And in a big city like Louisville, yes, this is important. So that's why I'm taking this initiative. Okay, and let's connect it to Brownfields. What I just said it not only applies to residential properties. I'm targeting and looking at now some of our huge commercial properties. And this is important because in a perfect world for me, here's my end game. I want to see residential and also commercial properties redeveloped. Sort of like what Bailey you was talking about, what y'all did in Hazard. That is beautiful. That's wonderful. And and in Louisville, this tends to be a slower process. So if we can see Brownfield, if we can connect the dots with this organization, here's Lee's Lane is a great example right here. You know, this site had a history of contamination, was classified as an unsafe structure. If you fast forward to where it is now, it's a great space that we can get developed and we can get it back into the city in a positive way. You know, all of our code enforcement officers are experts on lead base. We got a few that is get certified in asbestos. So we're on top of all of this. I've done that, you know, since I've been here to ensure that we got subject matter experts looking at these type things. And I just love Brownfield and what you're doing with these cases. This again, when you look at this is a very good success story as work with Brownfield, and we got to be able to connect the dots as a city, as an organization, code and regulations connecting with organizations like this to provide safe and healthy community. So let me close with this. Look, if we're going to be successful, and I've told the mayor, I tell every organization this, if we're going to be successful at code and regulations and reducing some of these vacant abandoned properties and doing all the things, we got to have clear priorities and we got to be guided by action. We got to engage the community early and often. And we got to have a true collaboration, not just internally, but we got across metro departments, across neighborhood associations with Metro Council. There's got to be a true collaboration to break down these silos so we can work together. And then what I tell my team every day, we got to be persistent. We got to be persistent. We got to stay the course so we can get this culture change, so we can create these safe, healthy communities. It's a journey, you know, and when we look at these future steps, there it is, the same thing. Clear priorities, community engagement, proactive enforcement is what I'm trying to do. Here's some QR codes that you can use. I'll leave it up there for a minute, but I'm so excited. And thank you, Tyler, for having me on and inviting me to do this. Every opportunity that I can get to talk to the community in any capacity to get the word out that in Louisville, Jefferson County, we're here to provide safe, healthy, clean communities, and we do that by clear priorities, community development, and breaking that and collaboration with our teams to do that. Okay, that's all I have, and I'll take any questions you have. I hope I didn't go over my time. I'll stop sharing my screen here.
You did not go over your time. That was wonderful, Richard. Like I knew y'all were busy, but I didn't know you were like that level of busy. That's a lot. And kudos to y'all for doing all this good work.
Thank you.
And I think on a couple of points that you mentioned at the end, you know, I think it is once again to that point of healthy, prosperous communities, right? And we
Yes.
at Blueprint talk a lot about engaging the community early and often, as well as using data to inform those solutions. So I really loved hearing you sort of echo that and show that it's being successful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I see we have a question in the chat from Mitzi. Um, is it possible to obtain copies of code enforcement ordinances discussed, or how can the copies be obtained?
Well, I was spending my time reading that and went to the City of Hazard has all of our ordinances posted on our city's website. So I am about to drop that in the chat. I'll drop a link to it. So yeah.
How about y'all, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll let Emily talk a little bit about that because she's my subject matter expert on that. She keep us going with that kind of stuff. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, hi everybody. We also, oh, sorry. Okay. We also have all of our ordinances listed on our website, so I will get the link right now and sent over to everybody.
Excellent. Yeah. And I can also send those links out again in the follow-up email where I send out the webinar recording, just for any interested parties, you know, to cover all our bases. Excellent question, Mitzi. Coming in from Western Kentucky, we appreciate you. So yeah, I have a question that I feel like, you know, you're kind of touching on each of you a little bit, and something that we hear almost every community we work in, almost every project we work on, is this idea of communities kind of struggling with their local elected officials, who might be reluctant to kind of make these sorts of big changes that are going to maybe upset people. Often framed as this sort of like a lack of political will is how we often hear it referred to, right? So I would love to hear what y'all's experience has been like, getting elected officials to embrace some of these new ideas.
Well, if I can jump in on that, I tell my team that one of the things, one of the barriers to success in a very polarizing and tough community that Louisville is you got to win the perception and political game, or the political war. Let me call it that, because that's what it is. And the way you do that, the way I've done it is, again, I told you earlier, getting into the communities, living moments. When you live the moments of the conditions that people are living in, when I go see for myself, and I see the conditions, and I see the outcry from the community, it's very easy for me to go before Metro Council. First and foremost, come back to the mayor. Come back to the mayor of City Louisville, who is a very compassionate and empathetic leader, okay, that wants our community to grow and to be successful. When I come back to the mayor and to the deputy mayors, and I say, look, this is what's going on. This got to happen, and then go before Metro Council, because they both got to be tied together as we talk about resources, and then sell it. I'm able to sell it because I've lived it, okay? And I get it. There's certain funding that goes from a political standpoint. Because changes in Washington where we don't have the funding that maybe the cities that used to have. But I challenge my leaders to make good decisions and prioritize based on true data that I've lived for myself. And so far it's been successful. You just got to be able to, you can't teach and sell anything that you have not lived, and you have not seen for yourself, and you have not lived it. I went out, I've lived it, and I'm able to sell it to them. And so far it's been successful.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll add to that. I think you're exactly right. I will say in a small town, you'll have these instances where someone will say, if you do this and it hurts my bottom line, you'll never get a vote from me again. And that can sound really loud because we do have a limited number of people. But if you have forward-thinking individuals in office, they are willing to look at that and say, I know this is for the greater good. I know that regardless of if this person and their family never votes for me again, this will be better for my community. This will be better for the people around. And so as long as you've got people that are willing to say, I don't care to make a few people angry if it's going to make the majority live a better life, then you'll be able to get there. And right now we have those leaders in place with us. And it seems like you do too. And not everybody has that. And I know I've been asked to speak to other communities about different initiatives that we've done. And they'll say, oh, I could never get my leaders on board with that. And that can be a massive thing if you do not have the right people in those positions that are willing to say, I'll take the crap for a few months, or whatever it is. Yeah, that it's a hard sell, but the greater good is ultimately what's going to make us all live better lives. So, yeah.
And can I add to that greater good that you're talking about, Bailey?
Yeah.
It's delivering results. Okay.
Right.
Listen, the mayor, the Metro Council, other political leaders, they are at the mercy of their constituents. Look, if we get in the community and we fix that vacant and abandoned property issue, we help reduce crime. Listen, we deliver the results that the community needs. That is the sale. So, because you're going to always have the bad actors and always out there say, this is impacting me. I've given a lot of money to this, but those will be drowned if we can deliver the results and give the services that our cities is asking us to do, and feel that government should deliver.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent perspective. Difficult situation to be in, but once again, that idea of community, the greater good, kind of rising above. And I think once again to that data piece plays well into this question that Jada has in the chat here of how does GIS play a role in your enforcement? And even beyond GIS, I'm curious like what data either of y'all have used in this work. So yeah, first off, does GIS play a role in your enforcement?
Yeah, GIS plays an important role, and this is where we have a great IT department that supports us tremendously. Um, in certain parts of town, and it goes back to the data in order and get into root causes. If we look at the data, we see that most of our issues with vacant abandoned property may be at the west end of town. A lot of our development or lack of lead may be part of the south part of town. So partnering with GIS and using GIS is a huge part to talk to these subject matter experts and analyze the data so we can go do code enforcement. One thing is very exciting, then I give it to Bailey. One thing is very exciting that we move into AI. We're using AI in this geographical to go out. There is AI technology that can go out and identify these property maintenance violations, these vacant abandoned properties, these stalled vehicles, abandoned vehicles, and to do all that for us. And GIS has helped us with that. And we are developing that process now, and I'm excited about it.
That's awesome. Hazard is so small that I just knew everybody. I know that sounds like such a cop out, but you can ask Joey who's on here. When I gave over my information on the job, one of those things included a spreadsheet I had created of every single building in our downtown, and it was not that big of a spreadsheet. And so because of that, I do think that's one of those places where like being in a small town can be really advantageous, but also really difficult because you do more than likely have some sort of personal relationship with these people. Probably they play on the soccer team with your kid or whatever it is, right? But it does also mean that finding the individuals, figuring out where the issues are and things like that can be a lot easier. I do believe in mapping things. I frequently have created many maps of different issues and different properties that we need to be looking at and things like that. I think it can be really helpful in kind of getting a sense of what your communities are too. Because if you can say, okay, this is a commercial building, housing, it can really kind of help you map and create the idea of how all these things interact. And so for that reason alone, it can be really helpful, even in a small town. So yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a whole bunch of map nerds here, which is great. And yeah, we do, it sounds like, with the spreadsheet, which we could frame as a building inventory, right?
Yeah.
Language we commonly use in the Brownfield circle or spaces. And Jada, I know y'all have done a lot of great work in Scottsville, sort of building that inventory already. So I hope you can find, some encouragement to know that you're kind of already ahead of the curve in the work you're doing in Scottsville. But we are at time, unfortunately. I suspected this would happen, that we could have gone 2 or 3 hours talking about this stuff. But I deeply appreciate y'all taking the time and creating these great presentations and sharing with us and answering some questions for us today. And like I mentioned, I'll be sending this out later, as well as the links to the programs in both Hazard and the city of Louisville, and some of the approaches that they're taking. So thank you all so much for being here, to Bailey, to Richard, to Emily, and to all of our attendees. Once again, next month's webinar, keep your eyes out for that, is about how to navigate the Brownfields notice of funding that will be coming soon. So this will be your last chance to apply for historic levels of funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law. So get in while you can. They got a lot of money left to give out. And once again, appreciate y'all. Appreciate our presenters so much. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you out in the Commonwealth.
Okay, thank you, Tyler, again for having us. Thanks.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Bailey.
I know. I hope we cross paths soon. So
Yeah.
yes.
Anyone want to reach out to me? I know Louisville, very easy to find me here at Codes and Regulation if you have any direct questions you'd like to have for me. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.